Thank you very much. I thought let me start my very brief talk ahead of the panel with just starting with this video. This video is from Gert Leonard, who's a strategist and futurist, looking at the future of technology, what the possibilities are. When I look at videos like this, I look at possibilities for Africa, possibilities for human development. And that's the crux of my speak today. A very short, brief conversation with the audience, with the conference. You see the possibilities of the technology, what it can do. How can we make sure that technology, ICT, big data, helps Africa leapfrog its own development? So that's the conversation I want to walk through. ICT can play a major role in to tackle some of the social challenges. If you look at the Sustainability Development Goal, poverty, hunger, health, and education are in the crossbow of nations across the globe. And these are particularly specific, stubborn issues that African governments are facing today, and we need to find solutions. And the solutions, in my view, are not going to come from traditional methods, are going to come from a combination of what we do in society, but most importantly, how do we leverage technology to help us leapfrog? If you look at the healthcare space, shortage of doctors, distributed communities, sparsely populated communities in Africa, how do you make sure you can deliver better healthcare? And these are some of the things I'll talk about in a few minutes. Education, again, transforming education. I believe that not in my lifetime will every school in South Africa or every child have a science kit in her hands or his or her hands to continue to experiment. But maybe we shouldn't be asking for that. Maybe we should be looking to technology so that we are able to have every child repeating the same experience at home, at school, even in the playing field. So these are the possibilities that technology talks about, presents to us, which means we should not lament the underdevelopment compared to the developed world. Instead, we should see opportunities to leapfrog that development. So that's the conversation I want to have with you today. At Vodacom, we look at a number of things. We talk about what we call social innovation. That process is quite simple. We look for prompts. Prompts is more the signaling, the sensing in the society, in communities, what are the challenges, what needs to be dealt with, and how should we respond to that. Then once we have a sense of the challenges, I've already mapped out healthcare, education, agriculture, and many others. We start to go into an ideation mode. So how then can we treat this? How do we apply technology in this phenomenon? And from there, we do prototyping. We start implementing to scale. We look at sustainability of the solution, and then we see systemic change. Classic example was when we dealt with the stock management in South African healthcare system. We started with dealing with the issue. We were to build ideas of how we can treat it to manage 3,500 clinics and a number of SKUs of medicine. How do we apply technology without bringing big IT systems? So how do we really deal with this challenge? So all our social innovation initiatives go through this litmus test so that we can make sure that they have a prospect of success. If you look at some of the broader challenges in Africa, every day we see headlines, youth drowning in the Mediterranean, which talks about the economic outlook for Africa. If Africa will double its population by 2050, then is the youthful population a demographic dividend or a time bomb? How do we deal with this around economic growth, education? What is the role of technology in agriculture? Africa is a net importer of cereals today. The African Development Bank has a strategy for Africa to feed itself by 2025. However, we're saying to them, this is not going to be achieved through traditional methods of agriculture. We are going to talk about smallholder farmers. Michelle spoke about this, saying that smallholder farmers we need to be part of the value chain. We are going to have to integrate them because Africa's agriculture is fragmented. It's comprised of smallholder farmers who farm no more than 5 hectares each. Until we find good solutions that give them access to market, we'll have challenges. So you can name it. Go to healthcare and go to education again, which I spoke to. Africa's DNA is mobile. At the center of the revolution is Africa's super mobility. We see a growing number of subscribers in Africa. Penetration is increasing, so it gives us the ability to do something. We're no longer going to rely on traditional methods of communication. We're using what is natively in Africa's hands. Hence we're saying Africa is the mobile is Africa's DNA. Now, we talk about the social innovation process, but also we also test it through what we call the leapfrog effect. So when you apply technology to social challenges, you must have the possibility to help Africa leapfrog its own development path. So when you look at the leapfrog effect, we are saying you must shorten the time to impact. If you apply technology to a social challenge, you need to shorten the time to impact. So if the developed world took so many years to get to the outcome, we must get to outcome a lot more quicker because we're playing catch up. That's one thing. Secondly, it must give a mass social impact. It must not just be a group of individuals, a small group of communities. It must be massive. Again, cost effective. Cost effectiveness talks to using what is natively in people's hands. So it's technology, it's skills. You reduce the learning curve for people to adopt the technology. That's why we're not putting computers in clinics. We're using mobility solutions because even the nurse who does the stock control uses the phone every day, uses SMS. We leverage that skill to make progress a lot more quicker. And of course, the results should be a big leapfrog in terms of the results we want to see. Classic example of a leapfrog effect, take a telephone. South Africa's first telephone landed in 1878. 16 years later, 1994, we only had 4 million telephones in South Africa, more or less, 4 to 5 million. 1994 to 2017, 50 million telephones. That's a leapfrog effect of applying mobile technology. Remember, shorten the time to impact, mass impact in terms of scale, cost effective. Cost effective because you're using a single infrastructure in one location to cover a number of people with no single lines that goes to every household. So those are that's the kind of leapfrog effect we're talking about. If you look at M-Pesa in Kenya, in terms of mobile money, similar kind of trend in terms of impact. So that's the leapfrog effect that is brought about by ICT. So I'm putting this as a position to say, I am not seeing how South Africa and Africa will leapfrog its development challenges without leaning heavily in technology, especially mobile and ICT. From a Vodacom point of view, how have we thought about some of this? If you look at the education area, for example, we look at how we connect schools that are distributed over a huge geography to improve the administration of school as an institution, using mobility, simple solution, no big IT, but very, very smart solutions that are running on this. We look at how we empower the educator in terms of skills for the new digital economy. How do we train them? We make sure they can teach in the new language using new tools. And again, we're looking at digitizing how students are learning. Now, when I look at what Europe is doing with everything, science kits for every child. However, they are investing in what is called virtual reality. I can conduct an experience of how I make table salt today. Sodium and chloride, I burn it, I get table salt, but not every child is going to see this. But virtual reality is creating those possibilities. And that's what Europe is doing, reducing the burden of investing in laboratories, saying that they want to make sure every child can actually repeat the experiment at home. So already advanced, but further accelerating. Africa shouldn't be left behind. And there are a number of areas, same frame, building from bottoms up, so basics and go to level of sophistication. That's been our approach even in healthcare. We're doing the same in agriculture, even with M-Pesa in terms of financial inclusion. I'm just going about to step off this podium now. It's just one video of an example on healthcare.
Is one of 1,750 healthcare workers in South Africa, going door to door, assessing families and capturing vital data. What was once done on paper and often lost in the system can now be done on a smartphone and ingested in real time.
We've developed a solution that allow community health workers or home-based care workers to visit clients on a household level or in a school setting or workplace setting.
The solution is called ATA Health. The app collects vital information and creates clusters of data across the country.
So your typical demographic information, your age distribution, gender, and then what is the type of diseases or conditions that is prevalent within that area.
Providing targeted intervention in areas that need it most.
We find for every patient that is known to the system, there is another person who either are diagnosed but they are not on management or they have symptoms.
To take this micro-level approach, it needs to be done at a large scale to make an impact. And that's where one of South Africa's largest telecom companies, Vodacom, comes in.
The platform enables us to aggregate different sources of data that are being captured by different community health workers, and you render them in a meaningful way through to the government officials that need to make decisions around this.
With a population of more than 54 million people and with only 480,000 in the system, there's still a long way to go to get everyone added. But targeting homes will result in getting people assistance perhaps before they need hospital care.
The more you can deal with people at home, the less they are dependent on having to queue at a hospital.
The public healthcare system in South Africa is overburdened, riddled with long queues and lacks resources.
The idea is that in the National Health Insurance, we will have a community health worker visiting every home in the country. And then we will have data available at quite a sophisticated level.
This
These are some of the examples of what we are doing. I'm talking about ICT for development, practical examples. We speak about the fourth industrial revolution. The key thing to note is that Africa did not participate in the three, but we stand in a good position to participate in the fourth one, and we should make sure that we are not left behind. The greatest tragedy with history is that far too many people do not manage to remain awake during times of great social change. So it's up to us, business and society, to make sure that Africa is not left behind and we're able to leverage technology to help us leapfrog the development challenges that we're facing as a country and as a continent. Thank you very much.
Sure. Sure. Okay, that is a perfect platform for us to bring on our panelists. I will not do a full introduction of all of them. I'm just going to mention where they are from so that they don't have to be embarrassed. We have Gavin Will from Liberty Africa. You can all see their profiles, by the way, in their bios in the program. We have Gavin Will from Liberty Africa. We've got Marsha Becker from Prakelt, Head of Business Development, Nati Kunene from Telkom Foundation, and Vuyani Jarana from Vodacom. Wow. Perfect. I'm going to... Right, let's kick this off with a little bit of a... Now, I think there was a perfect basis to work from Vuyani in terms of the latest terms, the young people say, stay woke. I think we need to stay woke about the fourth revolution, and in particular, this ICT process. Now let's just have a quick question to the rest of the panel, because I think you actually laid the platform for how does one go about ensuring we stay woke when it comes to ICT development and not being left behind when it comes to the technology and leapfrog technology in particular? I'm just going to pitch it to all three of you to give us an introduction, and then you can get going. We'll start with you, Nkosinathi.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Nati Kunene from Telkom Foundation, and we've invested quite a lot over the years in ICT as an ICT company, and lately more in education and focused in driving the skills development for ICT. So supporting the youth in terms of developing their maths and science skills and making sure that we drive them to economic participation. So that's what we've been doing recently. But we've worked with various organizations trying to also invest in projects that are contributing to socio-economic development. And I think it becomes very paramount for us to actually stay very close as telecom companies, because right now the BBBE sector codes are actually now channeling us to focus more in investing in solutions and investing in initiatives that are going to drive socioeconomic development in ICT sector. So I think it's going to be very important for us, as not only as telecom companies, but also as a sector, the corporate social investment sector, to stay woke, as you say, and I'm feeling a lot younger than you now, to stay woke, because if we are not, the technology has come into our lives and has actually interrupted quite a lot of what we know over, the past years. And it's not going to help us to have ICT as being brought into the development sector. So I will end with this, that we are working in a space where most people were born before technology and others during the technological advancement. But the development programs we're putting together are to assist our communities, most of which the youth is born with technology. So we have to really be keeping that in mind, that in order to reach the targeted communities, in order to be able to impact them in any way, we have to stay woke into the technological advancement so that we may find them. And let me end. Sorry, I know I said I'm ending. Let me end with this. We are living in the current society is that people have got dual lives, if I may put it like that. There's the real where we are, and then there's the virtual, the social media, the etc., etc. And if our partners in the non-profit sector are trying to reach our young people and others, we have got to understand how we put together our programs to be able to reach everybody.
Thank you. Nancy Kunene from Telkom Foundation. Thank you. Yes. Marsha from Preikelt, you've got a very interesting past, and Preikelt's also at the helm of development. What is your perspective?
Thanks for the opportunity. So my name is Marsha from Preikelt Foundation. Just for those who do not know what we are or where this difficult name comes from, we were founded by a gentleman called Gustav Preikelt 10 years ago. The company is a social impact business that works with mobile technology for social impact. Our work started 10 years ago with innovative projects in using mobile tools in healthcare. I'm glad to see that some of these logos on the screen behind me are partners that we've been working with in the corporate sector and in the mobile industry specifically for the past 10 years. We've done all sorts of things in the development sector, from working in agriculture, food security, working in election monitoring projects in India, to really in the past 2 years trying to zoom back in to look at two big areas that we feel passionate about and that we believe ICT can play a massive role in, and that is health and education, and with a very specific passion for women, girls, and youth. So examples of our work currently are we're the technical partners to the National Department of Health in their big maternal health program called Mom Connect and Nurse Connect, where we connect every single mother in the country that are currently pregnant or have a child under 1 year of age to a massive information system, basically, that connects the mother to personalized information that gets sent to her on her mobile phone. I could go on and on with other examples of our work, which I feel very passionate about. But to answer your question of how do we stay woke in this very dynamic place in history where we find ourselves, as Vianney illustrated with these lovely videos, I think three things for me stand out. And in that, when we design our programs using ICT in development, we need to start with the end user first, and really doing our very best to understand who that person is, what technology they currently have access to in their pocket, in their house, and literally designing our programs around that. And then not getting the end user after the design process. You know, we often think that, oh cool, we had focus groups, you know, we designed this stunning solution, and then we go away and we implement our pilot and we scale it up and we think that's great. But I do think along the continuum, as we roll out projects, we need to involve our end users at every single step of the way, from the design to the ideation, to the piloting and testing, and then through the constant iteration as we improve our solutions. I do think it's no longer good enough for us sitting in our offices in Joburg and thinking we can design a project for youth, young girls aged 16 years old in Bangladesh. We need to get on a plane and go to Bangladesh and immerse ourselves in those communities when designing these solutions. I do think cost and cost effectiveness for the end user is paramount. We can design fantastic solutions using very flashy technology, but if it's very expensive for users to firstly find your platform and secondly engage on that platform, I think your project is dead in the water to begin with. And then the big thing that our founder and us as an organization feel very passionate about is designing solutions for scale from the start. We have had this very bad stigma in the mobile industry around health, specifically with pilotitis. You know, millions and millions of small pilots running in one or two communities. The moment you try and scale up that solution, it fails. So you need to, and I'm speaking to myself and to us as a company, we need to constantly remind ourselves that you need to design your solution for scale from the start, so that you don't, when you reach 1 million users, suddenly everything breaks or it falls down or you can't handle the traffic. So for us, I think those three things, human-centered design, cost effectiveness, and designing for scale from the start are very important. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Thank you. Gavin, so well, let's actually just hear from you in terms of an introduction from your perspective on ICT for development.
Mm-hmm. Hi, so I'm Gavin Wheel, and 6 years ago I started a company called Liberty Africa here in South Africa. And we work with young people every day to try and design programs and platforms that help give young people a voice and create livelihoods. And since I started 6 years ago, and as digital technology has progressed and become more available to young people, we have, I think, found ourselves on the cusp of, I think, unprecedented opportunity to create livelihoods using digital. I've worked in entry to employment programs both in South Africa and the UK for the last 15 years, and I've never felt so much potential, and that's what excites me to build on, all that's been mentioned in the fourth industrial revolution and the opportunities it presents, because as every business, big or small, becomes more digital, every business needs to know how to be online, how to market themselves, how to sell online. And even that in itself presents a huge amount of opportunity for jobs, for micro-enterprises, for freelance careers. So our particular angle on it really is around that how this new digital world creates whole new career paths and opportunities for young people to gain a livelihood where they might not otherwise. And the good news is that there's lots of young people out there who are very interested and keen and able to capitalize on this, even if they come from less than privileged circumstances. And so I actually work with young people every day. That's part of our methodology is our programs are co-designed and run by and for young people. And so I wouldn't go so far to call myself woke, but I'm surrounded by lots of woke people. And I think that building on what Marsha was saying, listening and working with your audience and in our case, young people, is absolutely key. Because I think a lot of people write off young people in South Africa, and I have been consistently taken aback by how the opportunities we have created through our programs have been taken, have been used, and have been capitalized on massively. So I'll give you an example. Our biggest program at the moment is called Digify. It's in partnership with Google and now with Facebook, and it is teaching digital marketing skills to young people with the idea that they go into jobs or they start their own businesses. And we have seen in 10 weeks young people who haven't even completed a tertiary level qualification can take a 10-week training course and go into a high-quality digital marketing job in an agency. And that's partly because there's such good talent out there and there's such determination, but it's also, and this would be my other key thing, the demand for that kind of talent and those kind of skills in the industry. And therein lies a huge opportunity, I think.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gavin. Thank you. So let's get into the tough stuff, because I think we only really put the challenge to us in terms of SDGs in particular. What social problems are we really trying to solve? Let's be real. Access versus provision. South Africa, one of the best places, most recognized places for electrification, but can we provide electricity to every single person? No. And so the same applies to ICT. And access is something that we keep talking about, but the reality is, can people use the technology? Are we able to give them access in a way that's usable and then is we won't even get into scalable, just usable to start off with. So you talked about human-centered design, Marsha, and the programs from Telkom's perspective as well, but I'm going to target it at Vuyani. How do you see the way we can provide access to ICT to ensure that more people in more areas can access ICT in a usable format so that they're not left behind?
I think there's a bigger responsibility for government and players like ourselves to do a little bit more in a number of ways. So if you are going to roll out infrastructure to different parts of the country, you need government to be a little bit more agile in policy in terms of way leaves, access rights, as well as, of course, policy around spectrum. But also you need society to work with both private sector and government around securing the assets that get into rural areas. Some of the things we experience today, you roll out infrastructure, it gets wiped out within a month because there's high level of crime in the areas. So it's a whole psychosocial engagement in terms of provision of infrastructure. ESCOM becomes very important because if you provide infrastructure to a rural area with no electricity, your cost, you have to start looking at solar panels, and again, criminality kicks in. So I'm positioning one thing: close action, collaboration, government, private sector, society. Our own experiences a lot in the deep rural areas is that communities get impoverished by sites being taken away due to vandalism and so on. So it's almost like you're on a treadmill. Yet we still have to find modern solutions to deal with that challenge. We can't just outsource it to the community. That's the one thing. The second area that's important for us is to continue to look at the end-user computing devices, to continue to come down, because the first ticket to the game is to be able to land a miniature computing device in every citizen's hand at the price that they can afford. And keep in mind, all these things are assembled outside South Africa, most of them, and they are all imported. Our job then is to put pressure on the device OEMs to continue to innovate and bring down a low-cost smartphone, because once you land smartphones in a village, you're starting to create a different kind of ecosystem. I want to just make this one point whilst you're talking about just access. From a telecoms, it's about scale. It's a utility business. We industrialize things, take them from scale to make it massive, really massive, using platforms. Our focus from a Vodacom point of view, we are very clear about, whereas social responsibility, we believe it's a downstream effect of an economy that's not firing in the right way, or distribution or inequalities upstream. Now, how then do we use technology to deal with some of the key engines of the economy so that they create more and more people can get into jobs and have access to opportunity, so that you can lessen the group of the people who are falling outside the livelihood space, if you like, which needs the people in this room working with us to do some intervention. So healthcare, direct intervention, help government to do their job better, help private sector to do their job better, education, improve healthcare, direct intervention, not an enabler, agriculture, get ETG, Olam, Unilever to talk to the small guy in the Transkei or in KwaZulu-Natal, matchmaking, market access. Give enough data, create database, big data, so that the bank can have appetite to invest in Vuyane, because they know that Vuyane is a 4 tons per hectare producer of cassava instead of the other thing. So our focus is make sure that you focus on industry to transform them to be successful. If we do that, then the economy improves, then we've got less people who fall below the net. Yet they need to be covered through these interactions and also some of the funding. So I needed to just put that into perspective. That's our big focus, make economies work using ICT.
Excellent. So let me get controversial. I'm gonna move on to the other panelists, but I'm gonna ask you a question, which I'm gonna give you some time to answer while they do it as well. Is the problem not already there that you're suggesting one can already solve upstream? And I guess, let me rephrase it. Is the problem not so big already that you're being too lofty in your ideal, in the way that you're saying it?
No, I think keep in mind, my approach, I don't believe this is a binary issue. It's either bottom of the pyramid where there are challenges on top. So we have a problem which is big now. All of us must roll our sleeves like this conversation to sort the issue. However, if we focus on sorting the issue here only, so through doing these interventions at this level, and we're not keeping our head on the primary thing, because we must make the economy work. We must make industry more functional, more effective. We must make government deal with the health issue in a better way. We must help even rural kids to have access to better education so that they don't drop up, so that they become the doctors and scientists that they aspire to be, whilst dealing with the effects of the failed system, if I may put it that way. So I'm advocating that we have to be engaged here, Vodacom included. However, if all of us are here, we will continue be taking water out of the... It's a classic case. I'm saying, let's go and stop the pipe there. But we must clean the water out of the room because already it's inside. So it's not binary, it's both.
Thank you. I like that. That answers my question. You didn't even have to think about it. So let's just go into opportunities. And Gavin, I'm going to put opportunities with you and Nati in particular, because we're going to get into the human-centered design part. When you talk about opportunities, how are opportunities provided to kids who've never had access? And I know I'm keeping on harping on about this access issue, but if you've never switched on a computer and you're asking someone to be involved in the technology sector, how does one cross that digital divide?
Yeah, well, I think the truth is that the infrastructure is not happening fast enough, obviously, if you're a young person, you know. And before I go into the opportunities, I think there's one big threat at the moment, and that is exactly what you're suggesting, which is a lot of programs that capitalize on digital are developed for those who are connected, inevitably in urban areas, and the threat is that we're going to accentuate the digital divide if progress isn't made in less connected areas. On the flip side of that, I think that there are huge opportunities as more people and as more communities are connected. And I think a lot of us working in this area are kind of poised to pounce on any kind of, new infrastructure. We've been talking to government, about programs of connecting, under-resourced communities around the country, and how we can very quickly introduce some of our programs there, because once that oxygen of broadband is released, that we feel like there's a lot we can do with that.
Is that government's responsibility? Because I'm looking at our telecoms providers, and at the same time, I'm looking at both of you and saying, data costs are just as much of a challenge when it comes to connectivity and the telecoms providers. I won't ask you to answer that one just yet, but I'm going
Yeah,
back
that's a bit
to
of a rabbit hole of a conversation. I
yeah,
think,
let's
but-
not get into the full rabbit hole of it, but the connectivity part, is this, when you talk about it, are you referring to the government's provision in some way of connectivity, or are you suggesting that we need to, who's laying the cables, who's providing the connectivity, who's supposed to be responsible for that?
That I have no idea. But, for example, I know agencies like USASA are trying to unlock, give connectivity to communities, for example, in the Northern Cape and in the Eastern Cape. And I think from some of the work they've done, the feedback we've had is that, the technology is being engaged with and people are using Facebook and WhatsApp, and that's a start. And those tools are quite easy to pick up and use. For us, that's an opportunity because we believe we can teach using those tools. We believe we can do skills transfer using those tools. And we believe, for example, one thing we're trying to do with Facebook at the moment is design a program where you can teach someone to run a business on a cell phone, and using tools like Facebook to run your business. So picking up what Vianney said about, how technology can spark new economic activity, I'm really interested, and it's just a bit of a theory at the moment, in how we can create local digital economies in that way, where even more basic digital access can be leveraged and used for entrepreneurs, for businesses, for day-to-day life.
Great. Well, Master?
Just to add, I think that's a great segue into what I want to say in terms of also what Vianney said, targeting the problem at both levels. We need to work on the connectivity and the base stations and getting connectivity to people. But that said, for us as an organization, we feel we can't sit and wait until that happens one day. We have to work with what we have right now, which is basically every single adult in the country has access to a basic cell phone. What can that phone do? It can phone, it can SMS, and it can use USSD. The dumbest phone on the planet can do those three things. So why can't we start our interventions by looking at those most common denominators that we don't have to wait for anything? We can design those solutions right now. It brings me back to the cost effectiveness point. And unfortunately, in Africa, in our country, voice is expensive. Sending an SMS, still too expensive. Participating in a USSD quiz or survey on your basic phone, it's expensive, it's not free. So I'm really advocating for us to come together as role players from different sectors. I agree, mobile telecoms companies are businesses, they need to make money. But somewhere, we're not going to leapfrog to the next big development or the next big thing if we can't meet each other halfway and saying, how can we look at cost? You can make your money, that's fine, but we need to meet each other halfway. And if we're not going to get to that point, then we'll wait forever until everybody has a smartphone in their hand, and we'll not do any development using what people have in their pockets right now. So for us, that's quite a big passion, is to say, let's use what people have right now. Whilst all of these other amazing things are happening, we shouldn't sit and wait.
Well, it's a huge challenge. I think, thank you. It's a massive challenge, and if one looks at how, and you mentioned M-Pesa, for example, the USSD technology, in many ways, there are innovative solutions that one can come up with. For example, we can actually use some advertising to make free please call me's, etc., etc. Paid a lot of money for that, obviously, but there's innovative solutions that so you're right, we do need to come up with that. What I do want to ask Nati, what do you believe is the role of the telecoms providers then in ensuring the connectivity, the access, and the cost of these services are brought down so people there's a greater reach?
And I was hoping you're not going to ask me on the connectivity cost. Yeah, I think the role of telecoms providers, in this case, is to actually push in support of, we want to drive innovation in the space, where we could actually push for more affordable ICTs, and we all can agree that there's a lot that can be done with a smartphone. So I think it's to drive that innovation in that particular space, and making sure that with innovation comes quite better products that would be priced lower. I also wanted to make a comment on what Masha was saying, in that we don't have to look forward into a number of years for solutions. And I think if we look and be innovative enough with what is already here and what people can access right now as we speak, whether it's a 2G or a 3G type of connectivity, there is an intervention that can be put in place that could be of great assistance to the communities. So I want to encourage all of us to not only think of ICT as that particular Rolls Royce that must be designed and then be only drivable when we are done with it, when we've got this and that. But also to say, what do we actually need to get going? Maybe we need just a one-wheeler for now, and then we could build a second wheel as we go along. And I think if we focus on innovation, then we can somewhat get those offshoots and be able to have quite great stuff going. I'm not going to get more into the connectivity cost, but it's a broader question that I won't respond to, because the cost drivers are quite different.
Yeah, I think it's that rabbit hole that we could go down to. I think what we're really we're talking about today is the ICT for development. The data, etc. side, I think you alluded to the cost of devices, but let's go back to initiatives. And I know, Marsha, you've got a number of initiatives that you're working on, but what are the examples? And I think Nati sort of alluded to the idea that what we should be doing is making things happen rather than waiting for them to be complete. What are some of the initiatives? And I'm going to ask everyone to just really reflect on some amazing initiatives that you're either proud of, that you've been involved in, or that you've heard of, or you've seen, that you feel would really, really help address some of the challenges that we have on the continent.
It would be a missed opportunity if I didn't tell you about Mom Connect. So I'm sure many people have heard about the National Department of Health's flagship mHealth program called Mom Connect. And just to give you a bit of history of how it started, and Breakout's role in this is that we are a technical and mobile partner to the government in the design and development of this platform. But we're not the only one. We're a consortium of about 20 partners that work together to make this happen. And to sketch the problem, where we sat 4 years ago, was that the National Department said, you know what, we've got a development issue that we're trying to solve. We think mobile tools can help us solve this problem. And the problem they were trying to solve was to say, guess what, we don't know where are pregnant women in South Africa. We don't know how many pregnant women we have. We think we've got an estimate of where these women are, in which communities, and there's no way for us to track them through their pregnancies and to find out if their babies are born healthy or not. So firstly, we want to build a central pregnancy registry. Secondly, once women are in this registry, we want to send them personal stage-based information. So if I'm 6 weeks pregnant, I will get specific information based on my stage of pregnancy. If someone else is 6 months pregnant, they get different information based on the development of their baby at that point. Then thirdly, the minister felt very strongly that he didn't want to launch such a platform if there was no way for women to interact further with the health system. So some sort of way in which mothers could ask questions, could tell us what was happening at their clinics. So if they were treated badly, or if they sat in a queue for the whole day without seeing a doctor, there should be a way for them to report that as a problem. And then secondly, to ask questions through an SMS help desk. So what we could have said back then, okay, let's wait until every clinic in the country has a computer. Let's wait until every clinic in the country has a computer with a 3G connection. Just those two things would have made us still not launch a program. So what we did is we said, what is the most common denominator that the most basic handset in this country can do? And that is USSD, okay? It's not a very flashy thing. It's text-based only. It sometimes times out if you take too long. It costs money. It's not free. But we designed the solution around that basic technology that required minimal training. People use USSD every day in South Africa without even knowing that it's called USSD. This is the thing you use when you top up your airtime or you check your balance, when you send a please call me. All of that is USSD. So we didn't need to teach people how to use it. We could roll out a system like this in 4,000 clinics on the same day with minimal training. We managed to register now over 1.5 million pregnant women that are currently receiving messages either in pregnancy or their babies are under 1 year old. For our sins, we had to go to all the network operators and ask for their help. It's not something that government could do alone or private sector could do alone. We had to come together as a consortium of partners, and all 4 the network operators have agreed to give us discounts on SMS and USSD costs. Again, it still costs the project millions of rands. It's not an easy thing to maintain, and we need to look at other models of how to sustain this. But I do think it's an excellent example of showing how we could launch a service at scale, millions of women registered with basic technology that could work on any handset with minimal training and without a pilot. So we're very excited to be part of it, and we congratulate the Department of Health for taking that initiative and really taking that bold step of trying something like this.
Excellent. I'm going to bounce around a little bit and ask Briani, what ICT for development?
I think a lot of what we do, I've highlighted. For example, the area of smallholder farmer integration in agriculture, improving livelihoods. If you look at countries like Ethiopia, the average farmer has 1 hectare and they account for 90% of produce. Same with Nigeria, 5 hectares each. How do you bring them into the ecosystem to create value and make sure they can participate? Those are the things we've done. Stock visibility in clinics, 3,500. Unique SKU, every head of department who's authorized can see today what stock is not available in a clinic in KwaMashu, in KZN, or in the Eastern Cape, and they have to take action. Where there's stock that's about to expire, they can take decision and move it, saving costs, make sure there's medicine is available. That's improving healthcare. On top of that, we digitize the healthcare workers so that you can see the vital signs in a community and transpose that with the treatment regime. Then you know that you've got medicine because you're dealing with chronic disease in that particular area, whether it's TB, so that it doesn't escalate to extreme drug-resistant TB. So these are the kind of interventions also in the education. I do want, though, to go back to this thing about infrastructure. It's a bigger discussion because today South Africa is rolling out fiber aggressively. There's investment needed. Today, the economics of the country is that you are sitting at minimum 16% increase in energy. That's not negotiable. Now, that energy cost adds up. You have to budget for it. So when you see the results, often you use what you see and say, look, this thing, I want it to cost me close to nothing. But actually, it reflects structural diseconomies in the economy itself, which needs to be dealt with. How government efficiency, allocation of spectrum, energy balance sheet. Surely when ESCOM improves, then we should see energy cap looking very, very differently. I also want to state this, that part of it is also how consumers interact. We released results yesterday. 16% effective cost of data reduction in effective. I'm talking effective because we give you packages that are suited for you, private pricing. Young people, my son, knows what to buy, which package. And effectively, is getting data close to a very low rate. So that's also about, you remember now, it's about demand, it's about infrastructure. You use infrastructure utility to make sure price for that level of utility because we are constrained. So fiber, spectrum decisions are not being made. So all these things create complexity in how you run a business. So these are some of the things that if we're able to deal with, you'll be able to see data, cost, communication coming down significantly. Otherwise, the structural issues in the country are constraining everyone. We're doing our bit, 16%, we don't increase prices. So 16% reduction on effective rate on data. What also people must also realize, there's difference when you have a high-speed pipe, you use more. So it doesn't mean your unit prices change. All of a sudden, when you are drinking with a straw, then you get a big pipe, you will drink more if you're not constrained by anything. That's some of the dynamics around what we do. But the point is that we are all pushing pricing to come down, working with government, looking at sharing infrastructure so that the costs are shared. We can give the consumer better pricing over a period of time.
Good.
So, and thank you for that. I think sometimes what ends up happening, and we're going to shift two questions to the panel as well. Sometimes we do make it out to be the business or the private sector that's responsible for this conversation, but it's actually a broader conversation. It's and there's a range of complexity, so we won't get into that, but we do appreciate our two gentlemen from telecoms and the bravery that you. So just getting back to initiatives themselves, I just wanted to ask you again, just to clarify the agricultural initiative that you're working with. How do you create that ecosystem? How do you, because I'm going to then segue into Liberty's project.
Yes, absolutely. Firstly, if you look at, and it's different methodologies in different countries. For example, South Africa's agricultural profile is very different. 90% of produce is maybe carried by 10% of the farming population, if you like. 90% produce is accounted for by 10%. Different kind of engagement, large-scale farmers. If you sort out the 10, you've got food security, give or take. When you go to Kenya, you go to Nigeria, you go to Zambia, it's a different approach altogether. 70 to 80% of the farming population are small. They account for 90%. It's the inverse. Now, food security for those countries is very difficult. So you've got many of us who are going to produce in 5 hectares each, different skills level, different proficiency, different profile to access financial services, which means those countries have got an exposure to in terms of food security. So what we then do, work with government in terms of farmer registration, know your farmer. So we create a database of farmers who produce a particular commodity. Then you would get the big aggregators, whether it's ETG, Olam, Unilever, or Nestle, to say, well, we've got a portfolio of people who are producing, and actually they are producing cassava, so many tons of cassava this season. Therefore, I've got people to buy from. So I divert my buying power to Kaduna State in Nigeria because I'm going to get so many tons. So you create an ecosystem, a value chain that's integrated. Then in that case, government subsidies can go directly to a particular farmer for a specific commodity. Now, all of a sudden, over a number of cycles, seasons of Guyana producing, I develop a profile of proficiency. Then the risk profile, which is a black hole generally in smallholder farmer, is open up. Banks can see that this guy can produce at 4 tons per hectare. If his business plan says, give me money, I'm producing 4 tons per hectare, by the way, I've got an off-taker, which is an ETG on the other side, then all of a sudden lending goes that side. So that's the vision. That's what we're doing in Kenya. That's what we're building in Zambia and in Kaduna State in Nigeria. South Africa is difficult because most of the emerging farmers are not geared to farm for profits. So we're starting with a much more bigger dialogue with government, off-takers to stimulate the entrepreneurial spirit of how you reclaim land and use land profitably. So it's more developmental in South Africa. In Africa, it's commercial. The small guys are already hustling, farming for profit. So all you do, you have to enable them, give them access to market, give them technology. Next year, government can put subsidies through electronic voucher system. So that's what we are doing. In the rest of the continent, it's working. In South Africa, we are only starting. We are determined to make it work here. There's big interest in most of the off-takers, they talk to us. So that's the big intervention. And I don't see how we can deal with a youth issue without bringing in innovation in agriculture as part of the domains, on top of what we need to do on digital. Today, big players, IBM, Microsoft, eBay, you name them, they have most of their global digital workloads going to Manila in India. And we have an opportunity to create that capability for young people in digital skills in South Africa. The underlying telecoms infrastructure, undersea cables to America, is done by investing in the West Africa cable and Easy Cable. So the constraint in the international cable system is no longer the issue. Costs have come down significantly. What is needed is to build skills for digital here and get businesses in South Africa, including our own business as well, to seed our workloads to create this base, whether it's in the center of Johannesburg. Mayor Mashaba says we give a special zone here so that we can actually incubate this thing. So within we can go and campaign for global workloads so that we can actually make sure that the young people are employed. So these are the opportunities that exist, but they need dialogue, they need conversations in terms of how we can pull together and actually make sure we give chance to young people. I mean, this is the work that they are doing, and I think we can, working together, we can make great progress in this regard.
So Gavin, Liberty and some of your initiatives with the youth?
Yeah, so Digify Africa that I briefly mentioned at the start, I think that's the main thing to focus on. It started as a partnership with Google because they were concerned that digital marketing agencies were not finding talent and that talent was not diverse. And so we designed a program to try and find talent from outside of the usual universities and advertising schools. And as I said, it was very quickly successful in placing young people into work in quite a sort of competitive field. I guess the agencies were the people competing most for this talent. But over 95% of those who went through the program got a job, 80% are still employed, 2 years later. But we're talking about a few hundred a year at that scale, so obviously that's just the tip of the iceberg. So then the challenge was, well, how can we cascade this into bigger numbers, into different sectors, into more young people? So we ended up, with Google again, and with the Rockefeller Foundation and British Council, training the graduates of the boot camp program to become trainers, and then dispatched them all across the continent to train thousands of other young people. So we ended up training a couple of hundred young trainers, and they in turn trained 75,000 young people in Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, and a couple of other SADC countries. And what we were trying to do, I mean, that was quite experimental, but I think the core program was about a real entry point into a high-value job because those skills are so valuable. And at the other end of the scale is about how can we open lots of young people's eyes to the possibilities of digital and what it can do for your career. So what we're really focused on, I guess, is demand-driven training. There's a lot of training initiatives, all very noble out there, trying to help young people, but often there's no endpoint. But we believe that the digital, there's many endpoints, and most of them we don't really even understand yet because there's all these different careers. Even within the digital marketing industry, there's demand for user experience specialists, great demand, analytics, people who understand search, social media management, community management, all these new career paths that are just being understood, and everyone needs them. So therein lies the opportunity for us.
Thank you. So